This is the Unit 9 Lesson 4 homework, and we're going to solve each equation by completing the square. If necessary, round to the nearest hundredth. So I put the steps here, completing the square. Step 1 is find 1/2 of b, the coefficient in front of x, that number in front of x, you have to divide it by 2. Square the result from step 1. And then add the result from step 2 to both sides of the equation. And then you could go ahead and do the factoring. So we're going to take number 1 together, and the first thing that I do is to take -4, which is your b, and divide it by 2. That's the first thing that I do. And I will get -2. After that, I go to step 2 and I square that result. -2 squared. And I get 4. I add that on each side on the left side, and then I add that on the right side. It comes out to be x squared minus 4x plus 4 equals 5 plus 4. So I am just going to combine the like terms right here and just add those numbers, make it 9. So what happens when you do this, -4 divided by 2 equals -2, and -2 squared equals 4, you always have a positive number here. And also it creates a perfect square, which is right here. So what's going to happen is that your binomials, when you go to factor this, are going to be exactly the same. So what two numbers multiply to 4 and that add to a -4? That's -2 times -2. -2 plus -2 is -4. So we have this next. Okay, so we have that. And when we have the same thing in parentheses twice, that means we could put this x minus 2 squared equals 9. And that makes it a lot easier to see that you have to square root both sides. So what happens right here is that you take the opposite inverse operation of something squared and you square root the whole side. And then you have to do the same thing on the other side. And what's nice about this is that when you square root both sides, the opposite of squared is square root. And it's just like kind of cancels out. And you have x minus 2 equals 3, and it's plus or minus because every square root has 2 answers. It's 3 times 3 or -3 times -3. So you put it like this: x minus 2 equals +3 and x minus 2 equals -3. So I'm going to go up here and just put those two equations down. X minus 2 equals 3 and x minus 2 equals -3. You just go ahead and solve those now. And you add 2 on both sides for each equation. But you're going to get different roots. X equals 5 or x equals -1. So if you want to go ahead and check your calculator, you would put this in. You can't put this in, but if you subtract 5 on both sides and make it equal to 0, you could you could actually check in your calculator. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to see if we come out with the same roots. So I'm going to clear this out, and I'm going to put x squared minus 4x minus 5. Because remember, when you subtract 5 here, it would be this right here. You press graph, and let's see, our roots right now are -1, that's -1, and 5. It's perfect. All right, so I know I'm correct, and number 1 is finished. So here is number 2. Right, x squared minus 6x equals 10. Go ahead, see if you could do this on your own. Take the steps like that we did in that first question, and just go ahead and get those roots, solve for those roots. Press pause now. All right, hopefully you did this. This is the first thing that you do is -6 divided by 2, because you're taking this b right here, dividing it by 2, getting -3, and then squaring that result, which is -3 times -3, and that is +9. You add the 9 on the left side, you add the 9 on the right side. So that it becomes x squared minus 6x plus 9 equals 10 plus 9, which is 19. When you factor out x squared minus 6x plus 9, when you factor, you get x minus 3 times x minus 3. -3 times -3 equals +9, and -3 plus -3 equals -6. And you see how it's the same. X minus 3 squared equals 19. You square root both sides, and since 19 is not a perfect square, you have just take the square root, and it has no, you take the square root of 19 and then round it to the nearest hundredth, which is 4.36. It comes out to 4.35889, and you just round it to 4.36. You add 3 on both sides. Over here you split up the equations, making one positive and one result negative. You add 3 on both sides, you get x equals 7.36, and you get x equals -1.36. You could check it in your calculator by putting in x squared minus 6x minus 10 and see if you have the same result as far as the roots go. You could check your calculator that way. All right, so number 3, go ahead, see if you can do this problem. Press pause now. Okay, so x squared minus 3x equals 18. The first thing I did was -3 divided by 2 equals -1.5. -1.5 squared equals 2.25, and that's what you add to both sides of the equation up here. So you have 2.25 added and 2.25 added to the right side. You have x squared minus 3x plus 2.25 equals 18 plus 2.25 is 20.25. If you factor the x squared minus 3x plus 2.25, you find out that 1.5 times 1.5 equals that 2.25. And the way I did that is I just took my calculator, because I wasn't sure what times what would equal 2.25. I just square rooted the 2.25 and got 1.5. So 1.5 times 1.5 equals 2.25, and that's a negative times a negative equals a positive, and then -1.5 plus -1.5 equals -3. So this x minus 1.5 squared, you square root both sides because you want to get rid of that squared. The squared and the square root cancel out. You have x minus 1.5 equals plus or minus 4.5. The 20.25, you square root it and you get 4.5. And then, so you split up the equations just like this. X minus 1.5 equals 4.5. X minus 1.5 equals -4.5. Solve each, you get x equals 6 or x equals -3. You can always check it in your calculator just to see if those roots are correct. And that is number 3. Alright, so go ahead and try number 4. Press pause now. Right, so I just want to make sure you understand how important it is to check, especially check this or your answers in the calculator, because I just made a mistake, right? Everybody can make mistakes, and I'll tell you exactly what the mistake that I made when we get up to it. So what happens now, I always go ahead and I take the b and I divide it by 2. So it's -6 divided by 2, and that's -3. -3 squared, and I square it, it's 9. So then I added 9 on both sides, and I got x squared minus 6x plus 9 equals 9. And I'm going through this problem pretty good. And I factor this trinomial. -3 times -3 equals +9. -3 plus -3 equals -6 equals 9. Then I square root both sides because I have to get rid of the square. So the square cancels out with the square root, right? So when I wrote this down originally, x minus 3 was here, and then I put equals 9. And you know that the square root of 9 is 3, but I just did it because I was trying to get the problem done. And when you're in a rush, sometimes you make mistakes like that. So remember, so I went through and I got x equals 12 and something over here like was -2. Then I graphed this equation and I saw that, hey, wait a minute. The x squared, when I graphed x squared minus 6x, I saw it wasn't 12, right? One of the roots wasn't 12. This root is 0 and this root is 6. So just be careful, and then I went back and I saw exactly where I made my mistake. So that is very helpful. The calculator always is helpful. Please use it. Go ahead, do number 5, press pause now. Okay, so we have x squared minus 7x equals 0. You divide the -7 by 2 because the b is your -7. Right? You get -3.5, then you square it. -3.5 squared equals 12.25. You add that on both sides, and you get x squared minus 7x plus 12.25 equals 12.25. Adding 0 and the 12.25 together. When you multiply a -3.5 and a -3.5, you do get a positive 12.25, and you add them together and you get a -7. You square root both sides and you get x minus 3.5 equals the square root of 12.25 is 3.5, so it's plus or minus 3.5. You separate the equations, you add 3.5 on both sides, you get x equals 7, you add 3.5 on this side, and you get x equals 0. You can check it in your calculator. You'll see exactly the same roots. Number 6. All right, so just a reminder, the number 6, when you have something here where you have x squared plus 11x plus 10 equals 0, this 10 must be moved over to that right hand side first, and then you could go ahead and do whatever you need to do. All right, go ahead, try this problem, press pause now. So we have x squared plus 11 equals -10 after we subtract the 10 from each side. Then I divide it by 11 by 2, you get 5.5. 11 is b, and then you do 5.5 squared, and it's 30.25. So I added that to both sides. You have x squared plus 11x plus 30.25 equals -10 plus 30.25. That came out to be 20.25, so I brought it down here, and I left the x squared plus 11x plus 30.25 on this left side. when I took the square root of 30.25, I got 5.5 as, I found out 5.5 times 5.5 equals 30.25, and I knew that all of these were positives, so that means everything's positive here. So you square root both sides, and you get x equals 5.5 without the square root, and equals plus or minus 4.5, because the square root of 20.25 is 4.5. All right, and so now I split up the two equations, and you have x plus 4 plus 5.5 equals 4.5. You subtract 5.5 on both sides, you get x equals -1. Subtract 5.5 on both sides here, and you get x equals -10. I checked it in the calculator. All you have to do is graph this in the calculator, press y equals to x squared plus 11x plus 10, and you will get these roots right here, checking your answer and seeing if it's correct. Number 7 is set up for you nicely already, so go ahead and see if you can work on number 7, and you could press pause now. So number 7 has x squared minus 8x equals 9. It's set up for you nicely. I took -8, divided it by 2. You get -4. -4 squared equals 16, and I added that 16 on both sides. So you have x squared minus 8x plus 16 equals 9 plus 16, and I came out where I left the left side, x squared plus minus 8x plus 16 equals 25. So I factored out that trinomial. I factored the trinomial to x minus 4 times x minus 4, because -4 times -4 equals 16, positive 16, and -4 plus -4 equals -8. And that's about it. So you have x minus 4 squared equals 25. You square root both sides. Taking the inverse operation of something squared, you square root it. You have x minus 4 equals positive and -5. So you split that up. X minus 4 equals 5, and x minus 4 equals -5. You solve for both. You get x equals 9 or x equals -1. Those are your roots. Again, you could check it on your calculator by substituting x squared, inputting x squared minus 8x minus 9 into the calculator, and you should get these roots right here, checking your answers. All right, so number 8 is this, set up nicely for you again. So go ahead, see if you can do this. Press pause now. Okay, so number 8, x squared minus 2x equals 20. You go ahead and divide -2 divided by 2, which is your b, and you have -1. -1 squared equals 1, so that's what I added on both sides, and I came up with x squared minus 2x plus 1 equals 121. When I factored this trinomial out, -1 times -1 is +1, and -1 plus -1 is -2. Equals 121. So x minus 1 times x minus 1 equals 121. Then you square root both sides, and you get x minus 1 equals plus or minus 11. Add 1 to both sides, add 1 to both sides, you get x equals 12, or x equals -10. Check it in the calculator, graph x squared minus 2x minus 120, and you will see that the roots are correct. Number 9, almost there. This is not set up nicely for you. So this 4, this -4, has to go on the other side before you even do anything. Okay? So go ahead, try this problem, press pause now. Okay, so we have... what I did right here is I added 4 on both sides. I did get x squared minus 8x equals 4, and then I just put -8 divided by 2 equals -4, and I squared -4, and I got 16. I took -8 divided by 2 because this is the b. So I added 16 on both sides, and this is what I have right here, and I got x squared minus 8x plus 16 equals 20. because 16 plus 4 is 20. I figured out, I factored the trinomial x minus 4 to x times x minus 4, and that's because negative 4 times negative 4 equals positive 16, and negative 4 plus negative 4 equals negative 8. Now that equals 20. Square root both sides, and you got square root of 20. Square root of 20 is 4.47 to be exact, 4.47213. So it rounds to the nearest hundredth, 4.47. You add 4 on both sides, and you get x equals 8.47 or negative 0.47. You can check it in your calculator, see if that works out. It does, and that's it. Last question. It looks like this. It's not set up for you, so please go ahead and take that 4 on the left side and put it on that right side. All right, go ahead, try this problem. Last one. Press pause now. All right, x squared plus 4x plus 4 equals 0. You subtract 4 on both sides, and you get x squared plus 4x plus 4 equals negative 4 plus 4. So I got this. X squared plus 4x plus 4 equals 0. By the way, I took b and I divided by 2, and that equals 2. 2 squared equals 4, and that's why I'm adding 4 on both sides like this, right here and right here. So all positive, so makes it a little bit easier. You have x squared, x plus 2 times x plus 2, and that is x plus 2 squared equals 0, because negative 4 plus 4 equals 0. You take the square root of both sides. You do not have two equations in this one. It's x plus 2 equals 0, and that's it, because 0 cannot be positive or negative, right? 0 has no sign. So you have x plus 2 equals 0. You subtract 2 on both sides. X equals negative 2. So if that's correct, I am going to see it right on here. If I graph it, I have x squared plus 4x plus 4, and then you graph it and just take a look at what it is. It is negative 2 right here, right? So it meets that x-axis, does not intersect it fully, and then come back up the other side where you have two roots. This is one solution. All right, so that's it, and hopefully that video helped you out, and see you next time.